Brett will answer the question later if you're doing a sponsored tweet, how you can get your caveat about who's sponsoring it in 140 characters. So, who owns the stuff that you post online? You, the site, others that you share it with, the world. The easy answer is yes. The harder answer is it really does depend, because it depends upon the nature of the stuff, the nature of the site, and the nature of the right that you're claiming. But the two basic ones that we're talking about here, you can put patents to a side, are copyright and trademark. Copyright obviously applies to an original expression, not an idea, not a fact. And someone has noted that 90% of tweets are just a repetition of facts that appear elsewhere first. So there's a pretty good argument that for copyright, the number of tweets that actually could be claimed to be copyrighted are very short. Trademark is more of a concern not for people who post, but rather Twitter squatting, meaning the expropriation of someone's trademark word as a username on Twitter or Facebook or something like that. It's much more of a concern for the corporations than the users. So let's focus on the users. It first depends upon the nature of the access. In Twitter, if you post a tweet, it's available to the entire world, not just to people who follow you, and not just to people that you've selected as your friends. And until at least yesterday, even if it were deleted, it will be archived somewhere. So tweets live forever and anyone can see them. There's a difference between that model and the model of, for example, a Facebook, which is fairly much a walled community, but also gives you the ability to decide who can see your content. And I think a fairly strong argument can be made that if you make your content available via Twitter to the entire world, you've either impliedly given folks a license or you've abandoned any claim that you own it, much like sort of a Creative Commons license. Second, it depends upon what people are using it for. Normally, the copyright rule is if you use someone's entire expression, the entire article, that cannot be fair use. I'm putting it in fair use by Dr. Evil in quotes because fair use is a term of art. It means you could use a portion of something for commentary or parody, but you can't lift the entire work. Well, tweets, by definition, if you're retweeting, unless someone has gone above the 120 character recommendation, you're basically repeating everything that they say. And if that's not fair use, then the whole practice of retweeting is illegal. And I suspect that the law will take into account the practical realities and conclude that by posting something on Twitter, you are acting much like Pete Cashmore of Mashable once said, people aren't copying my stuff, they're retweeting it, and I love it. The converse is also true, or the corollary is also true, rather. We had the fellow from CNN before. You know, during the Iran election crisis in June and when MJ died, there were lots of information that was first broken on Twitter, that was read aloud on the television by some of the news outlets, or even displayed. If tweets are copyrighted, that's illegal too. So it depends in part, again, on the nature of the access, the type of use, and finally, the type of content. There's a difference between the photographs that you post to Flickr and the stuff you put on Twitter and the stuff you put on your blog. Unless the blog is expressly donated to the public domain, it tends to be presumptively copyrighted. The same thing with photographs. I suggest respectfully and tentatively that I think the law will develop that it's going to be difficult to claim and express copyright in a single tweet. Not the least of reasons of which is that it's hard to be original and expressive in 140 characters. And finally, it depends upon who you're dealing with. There's this wonderful juxtaposition between the terms of use of Twitter, which say you own your content, oh, but we license it anyway, and the terms of use of Facebook, which for the people with short memories will recall that last fall there was a huge backlash when they changed their terms of use to give themselves a license after the member has withdrawn. And their explanation made perfect sense for the lawyers, but it was a PR debacle. And that was that if someone dies, if you share your content with others, they need a license to display it. So there's differences between the agreements, and going back to the beginning, in the absence of a statute, in the absence of a court decision, what the courts are going to rely on, or what the decision makers will rely on to resolve disputes, is obviously a private agreement between yourself and whoever you're doing it with. We used up about 14 of our minutes, so unless there's some big hands out there, I'll just ask one question, which is, I'll ask it to Brett. Brett, the FTC ruled a year ago that if a website posts a privacy policy voluntarily and doesn't agree to it, it's an unfair action. Do you think they're going to do the same thing on social media policies? And you have 5 seconds to give us the
Yes, absolutely. I think they do. But how quickly they enforce it and how aggressively they enforce it, I think it's going to go back to the local attorneys and social media people who are going to enforce it themselves.
All right, well, I hope we gave you a few gems, and